When was the last time you heard about an entrepreneur from Western Australia? See, if you're like me, the word entrepreneur probably makes you think of people like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or Mark Zuckerberg, college dropouts who made billions of dollars in Silicon Valley. But when was the last time you heard about a startup coming from Australia, or let alone even Western Australia? Where can we find one of these mysterious beings known as entrepreneurs in our local neighbourhood? Well, one place to start might be at Bloom, an organisation which helps cultivate the entrepreneurial spirits of young people so that they can turn their ideas into fully functioning businesses which help solve real-world problems. So, without further ado, my name is Jesse Zhu, and today we're going to be doing a Q&A with one of Bloom's amazing members. So, for our very first episode, today we're going to be interviewing the fantastic Mr. Dylan Hrurukvit, co-founder and CEO of Idle Australia. Dylan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
First question, am I actually pronouncing your last name correctly?
Best way to do it is Hrurukvit.
Oh, Hrurukvit. All right, off to a good start.
That'll do.
So, let's talk about your claim to fame now. You know, your startup, Idle Australia. What is it and how does it work?
So Idle is a web portal and a web platform where construction companies can list their equipment for hire between other businesses, where they can save money on the rates they pay and they can make money from equipment that they're not using otherwise.
And so, like, how do your users benefit the most from using Idle?
I think one of the major benefits they get are right now there is no way to actually rent between small or medium businesses. It's all kind of the traditional quoting and Yeah.
So, what was your inspiration for creating Idle? You know, I feel like a modern archetype in pop culture these days is, you know, you have the genius hacker, the Harvard, Stanford dropout, and one day they just have this, you know, eureka moment and they go, make $1 billion business. Was that similar for Idle, or was it something you planned over time, developed, and then, you know, changed as you went along?
For me personally, Idle didn't happen overnight. It was kind of I was working at the time and I was actually going to buy a house. And so my primary interest, I was told by family and friends, you're supposed to save, you're supposed to work hard. And I was saving up to buy a house, and then I realized that I didn't actually want a house, and I never really did. It was kind of what I'd been told.
Yeah.
And then when I decided to pursue business as a passion, then it was a lot of planning, and it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like I quit my job and I decided I'm going to do this. This is amazing. It was more of I prepared myself mentally and kind of financially for what I wanted to do. And then when the time was right, I kind of took it upon myself to go for it.
Yeah, for sure. So, just out of curiosity, did you actually have a full-time job before you started Idle?
Yeah, so before I started Idle full-time, I worked for the best part of eight years as an electrician and supervisor in mining and construction. So I was actually a tradesman, it's not the tech guru that people envision as the founders or the people who lead the way. It was more a bit of industry experience in what I saw and what I felt was very inefficient in the industry and what I wanted to change. Which is what led me kind of towards Idle. So it was not, so it was a lot of experience and I worked a lot. That's the short answer. The short answer is a lot of hours.
Yeah, definitely. And so how did people react when you told them, you know, I want to form my own company now? How, you know, here's a young, strapping Dylan Hrurukvit, and you go up to your mum and dad and you say, hey, mum, dad, you know, I'm quitting my job now. I want to form my own company. How did they react?
There were mixed reactions. So from family, I think the initial hesitation was around, we thought you were going to pursue this kind of safe, traditional, you'd been working so hard, you've done the normal thing. And I think there was the support has definitely been there from the beginning, but I think there was hesitation at first, as in, do you think starting a business is a better option than buying that house you've been saving up for? But I think family definitely helped, and then reaching out to the broader network and finding people who were similar, I think was one of the biggest things that made me realize it's time.
And so you talked about a bit of, hesitation from your family. So I feel like that's a common, sort of like a common thing with a lot of people, I feel like a lot of young people these days, they have great ideas. They have all these amazing ideas. But, like similar to your case, maybe, their parents might have expectations for them, great expectations to become, a lawyer or a doctor or, one of those stable jobs. But obviously you moved past that. So I guess what was the spark that made you, turn your idea from just an idea into, an actual business?
There are kind of two parts to that when I think about it. And for me, it was, I had made the decision myself in my head and I'd prepared myself for what I wanted to do and what I was going to do. And so in that aspect of preparation, no one was going to talk me out of it anyways. It was kind of like I was going that way, regardless of whether they liked it or didn't like it or.
Yeah.
And then in regards to what actually really ignited the flame, I think it was a mentor at the time who was, because I initially started working on the startup just after hours in my spare time.
Yeah.
I do all the things like just breaking down the milestones. But then it was a mentor who I remember at one stage I was kind of frequently talking with, and he kind of started kicking my butt and telling me to move faster and do more and
taking the whip out.
Yeah, and this is really cool, but you need to go. Like you don't need to like you want to run, you really need to go for it. So don't half-ass it. Like do a really good job and go as hard as you can. And so it was that moment when I don't know whether it was external confidence kind of being like given to me that really pushed me that extra step. But I just think, it's a multitude of different things. But that was one thing I remember being, I really need to do this really, really intensely.
And so how did you meet the mentor?
So this mentor in particular, he actually reached out to me through a few different networks. So before we met, I had no introduction. It was just purely a friend who off the cuff had mentioned what I was doing. And then he had aligned interests in the field. So naturally he kind of reached out, got a coffee, and then things just sparked from there. There was a lot that we had aligned, and there was a lot that he definitely helped me out with early on.
Does he still help you out? Are you still guys regularly in touch, or is it sort of you moved on from you're strong enough to survive on your own?
Well, I don't think it's ever about being alone or like thinking you're better than anyone else or any means. There's the close mentors that we hold at Idle are people who kind of can very frequently engage and support exactly the direction we're after. So something I kind of also learned early on was that not everybody is the right fit with your direction and vision. So this one particular mentor who I still admire to this day, we don't keep up to date with as much as I'd love to, but there's no hard feelings there.
Yeah, sure. So you've just quit your job and you're starting to form Idle yourself. Yeah. What was it like at the very beginning? Were you like nervous, excited?
When I first started, I think there were nerves, but I was so set in what I was doing. Yeah. And I was kind of more
completely focused.
Yeah, laser focused on breaking down this barrier and the next and the next. And I remember almost being unfazed by all the complexities and almost being naive to how hard it was. And I think that's one of the things you kind of need very early on is to really believe that you can do it and to really have that conviction in yourself and the confidence to do it beyond the rest of the world really incubating you up to do it. Yeah. So at the time,
So what was the first step you took towards, building Idle? So you've quit your job and you've got the idea in your head, but what's next? Where do you start on this blank canvas, I guess?
I can only answer this with personal experience. And so mine was, I did a lot of business courses after work. Okay. So this is even before Idle, in the lead up to kind of pursuing Idle as a business or as a startup. I used to do online courses after hours, and that was purely for my own enjoyment. So I would say one thing that I value is getting the most understanding you can before you enter it, or like how you move into anything or pursue anything. And then I remember I did the kind of obvious things. It's like, all right, I need to register a business. All right, register a business. I need to, I need an ABN. So I got the ABN. I need, now we need to build a website. Or like, how do we test this? How do we test this idea? We need to build a website, buy the domain. We need to buy the domain. I went through all those little typical things. But then beyond that, you get into the harder ones where you go out and speak to customers, where you drive around and then you go door to door. And my background is electrical, so at the beginning I drove around I kind of got Google Maps out and then put Perth into suburbs.
Good free Google plug.
And then I drove around to all the electrical companies, and then I pitched the idea to them and I asked them if they were interested. And I kind of got a lot of them on board verbally to begin with. But there's so many lessons you get out of it. Is once we actually finally built it 6 months later, half of the people that said yes at the time didn't even kind of come on in the end of it. And then it was it's a whole different cohort that actually use it. So going about how you start it is a complex one, because there's not one way to do it. I feel it's just there are so many different ways. As in, like, I learned how to. Well, I know I needed to design something, or how do you get a design? Do you either pay a designer or? Well, I learned how to use Photoshop, and then I made designs on my laptop, and then I found a developer at a networking event, got him to build the website. He was a student as well, so it was great. It was a great deal.
And just on that, like the first steps, I feel like, watching a lot of pop culture movies these days, a lot of people just think like, first step, you've got an idea, you go to like angel investors or something like that. Was that similar for you, or was it more like you did a bit more planning, a bit more development, that sort of thing?
I think for me, it's I don't know whether I did it right, because I planned, but then I also didn't plan as well, a lot of things, right? So I really like personally to show people what I'm doing as opposed to tell them. So for me, often what I kind of get myself into is I do something, or I go speak to someone, or I action something, or action the next step, or whatever I'm focusing on, and then I'll just show people afterwards, gauge their reactions, and then go back and do something again. So in terms of whether that has been the right way to do things or not, I'm still not sure.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'll be able to tell you one day.
In the future. And so what were the biggest challenges you faced in the beginning, and since then, what are the biggest challenges you faced, and how have you overcome them?
I think there's definitely one of the hardest things I've kind of learned is that nobody seems to have the right answers. It's like, I've been in so many circumstances where I've asked for advice on, well, how do I do this, or what is the next step, and then get two polar opposite answers. And I kind of realized very early on that it's not even about the answer that you get, it's about how you action that decision yourself and address it very promptly. So one of the challenges very early on was figuring out how to do things, and then realizing that the easiest way is to do something, right? Like the indecision.
The actual execute.
To actually do it is seeming to me one of the most important things, not whether you did it right or perfectly, because I'm also a perfectionist in some aspects, and I can see how detrimental it is to everything else that we're producing. So I would say going for things, like really like actioning things when you can.
Yeah, sure. So Idle nowadays, you were officially registered in 2016. So what are some of the biggest milestones you've reached since then?
I think the first time you build something is really cool. And so if you've gone through the whole process of design, finding people who can develop it, building a product, building all the intricacies, building all the functionality, to see a product that works like that online is really like amazing. And then the next time you get that amazing feeling is when somebody organically uses it, and then they pay you for it, right?
Then you're rolling in the money.
Or they use the service, and it kind of validates all that risk and work that you've been doing earlier. So I feel like the second one was, well, when we actually got someone to organically use it, and that we weren't coaching through the process, because early on there was a lot of that, teaching people what we're doing and how we're doing, and as we refine it, that gets easier. People come in easier, people transact easier. And then I think the third most important milestone has been maybe watching the team develop a little bit, because it's really funny, the people that come in the door at the beginning are not the people that you have in the team. They develop so quickly and so intensely. I think that's like, it feels like one of the achievements I have is like, I could show you this guy before he joined the team and what he looks like right now in the team, and
before and after.
Yeah, the personal development and the professionalism and the rate of execution, and like, that is something that I kind of personally regard. It's a really cool milestone that is kind of detracts from the whole business of what we're building, but it's something I kind of really appreciate as a milestone personally.
So what are you guys building now? What are some current projects? What's coming up next in Idle?
So one of the things we did early on, and this comes down to realizing how wrong you are about so many things that you think you're right about. And so what we built Idle initially for small businesses to wet and dry hire between themselves. And then we've realized, well, actually, the industry that we're targeting is beyond just these small companies. We need all the bigger companies to also participate, which means changing the fundamental way you do the business and like adapting to their needs as well. Because all of a sudden, when you have a more diversified kind of client base, they have different needs and different expectations, and it's all of the things that you realize, well, that I've realized once I got there, as in right now we're going to work on, well, how do we then appeal to these larger companies that have huge inventories of stock, who could benefit in the exact same way that these private companies can, or these smaller ones, and how do we really build out that service for them in ways that are meaningful and ways that they really, like, when they see it, they go, that's exactly what I need. Because we can do that with small business now, but then the next step is how do we get medium and large companies on board as well. So it's not one single challenge, it's a big one encompassed in lots of different things. But I'd say that's the biggest challenge now.
Yeah. So now looking back at your journey, well, right now as it is, what would be some advice you would give to your younger self?
I don't know what advice I could give myself. I think it would just be to be ready or to be prepared. I think that naivety that you have is almost, it's like if you could go back and tell yourself the simple answer is I'd tell myself to build a better MVP or a cheaper version or to not employ that guy or to employ that guy or to whatever the little. But those things are kind of, I feel like they're obvious. In terms of what I could tell myself, I feel like it was better that I knew less, right, back then, because if you know, there's a common saying, it's like if you know how hard it is, you'd never do it to begin with. And I think very much so when I started, the optimist in someone is like almost their biggest asset at the time. And especially if they're determined and self-motivated and driven, I believe they could do it. But then if perhaps they had 10 years more experience and in understanding on what it actually entails, maybe they wouldn't pursue it. So it's hard. What advice would I give to myself? I'd say,
just be
prepared.
Yeah, be
prepared
for anything. Boy Scout honor.
It,
Okay, so, and again, on the similar sort of theme, you know, if you could build a time machine and you could go back in time, what skills would you tell yourself to like really, really develop?
I think skills that I need are related to my personal development and where I see my own shortfalls. So one of the things I feel like I do a lot in meetings and conversations I have is I often undersell or underpromise and then overdeliver. And it's kind of something that I acknowledge I personally feel, but then I'm not sure whether that is best suited to promote a brand or a company sometimes. I wonder if there are other personal traits to be an even harsher like an even more critical salesman, an even there's characteristics of myself, but raw skills, I think there are so many things that you develop along the way, and it's not one skill that you use. It's like, and that's another thing.
Yeah.
You need time management, and you need financial management, and you need interpersonal skills, and you need the ability to network and connect with people, and you need to be able to connect with customers, and you need to be able to plan and develop and project manage and kind of design and forecast or strategize. And it's never one skill, as in I need to be a good video maker or something like that. There's so many different things that I feel like it's a hard one to choose, because you're juggling so many different tasks, it feels. I don't know if there's one skill or three skills that I could name. But selflessness, that's probably the number one thing. Like, be self-aware of what's around you and your company and your team and your business and how people feel. That's probably the best I could give you.
But just in terms of that development, how do you feel like, creating Idol, how do you feel that's impacted on you, like, as a person?
That's actually a funny comparison I would draw. So there's often when I sit in a car with somebody else and they drive me around, I have no idea where I'm going, right? And I never look, well, sometimes I do, but often I feel somebody else is driving, someone else is looking after things. Whereas I think the sheer rate of development that's happened since I started Idol is that you're so aware of so many different things, and you're the sole responsible person for executing a lot of those things. So there's there's parts of it that I love where there is no accountability. It's no one else's fault. If things fail, if there's no customers, if the customers complain, if there's a bug, like you're the number one. Like you're the one responsible for all of the good and bad. I think I missed the question there, but so what? All I remember is driving a car.
No, that's fine. So, do you feel like your original vision for Idol is it still alive, or is it changed at all?
Changes so much. So it seems to be every second customer you speak to gives you a new idea and a new problem or a new way to look at things. So I think the original idea or conception for Idol was very naive or very fledgling is maybe the better way to describe it. But I think as time progresses, you refine your idea and you refine your problem and your solution and how you do things and why you do things. So Idol has definitely changed since its first idea stage. Even as simple as when we first built it, it was for companies to hire equipment between each other. And then soon we realized people wanted to put their operators up as well and say, I'll do the job with my machine and we'll kind of do it together. So we pivoted away and include operators and machines in this whole other segment of the market. So things change a lot, and things get refined. They get better. They don't get worse. They get better every single time that you figure out, I'm missing this, or I need to do this, or the customers demand we do this, or one customer said this and 50 others didn't. So it's kind of the balance of how you refine the product over a period of time. So it will change. Again, I don't know how drastically. It could drastically change again in future, but time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, time will tell. And so what do you envision for Idol in the future? What's next for Idol's future, and even yourself? What do you see?
So there's, in terms of what I want, I know that we're aiming for Perth as a small market segment first to target. So we want to be the absolute number ones in Perth when it comes to sourcing small types of equipment and or any short-term hire. So in terms of how my mind is working at the moment, I feel like I want to show people how well it works here. And then the next stage will be, I'll show you how well it scales in Adelaide and Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane, all at the same time, while we take all the lessons from Perth. And I think it's beautiful in that Perth is kind of my home, and that it is isolated from the rest and insulated a bit from the rest of Australia. So we have the luxury to really hone Idol here, and then move it beyond where it starts.
Yeah, for sure. And how about yourself? Do you have any like big plans, like personal goals for yourself, or is it just focusing on Idle?
At the moment, I feel like between my girlfriend and my family and Idle, that's pretty much all there is. There's occasionally like, I don't work 24/7.
Yeah.
I definitely have
A life outside.
Have to separate personal and work life. But I actually really enjoy working, so it's not that big of a deal. Like, I would happily keep working until 7 or 8 or 9 if I didn't have to go home and eat dinner. But it's if you really enjoy something and you're motivated to do it, it's not even about about work. It's not even work. It's like a really deep goal that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
For me, anyways.
And so, talking about your parents, your partner, and, even touching upon your mentor, who do you feel like have supported you most over your journey? Who are you most thankful for?
Throughout the journey, there's definitely the family. There's definitely friends and your close friend group. I remember even pitching ideas to them back in the day, and they were the ones that were like, that idea sucks, or that's really cool, or they were very supportive early on. And then the family, again, they're a great sounding board to tell you when something's stupid or when something's really good. Yeah. But then again, your family and friends want you to succeed, and they sometimes don't want to tell you the hard truths. But I think the most supportive, in terms of business, are directly the team and the people you surround yourself in. So for me, huge support actually came in the form of Bloom in the very early days, where it was me with this laser vision that I was going to build this company and I was going to do this thing in the industry that no one was really doing, and then to find Bloom at that period where I didn't know other people were it wasn't about being a startup or anything of the likes. It was, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I don't know how I'm going to do it, but this is what I'm going to do. And so early support definitely came from the team that I built up in Idle and the kind of surroundings. What's that saying that I really like? It's you're
the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And
surround yourself with really great people, right? Like people that are 10 times better than you in every single way, more experience, have so much more knowledge than you do in any particular field. Hang out with them, because chances are you can take you can scrape off some of that info from them. And so I think surround yourself with really supportive, great people, especially people who are in the same headspace, doing the same thing, working on similar projects or in the same industry, like innovation or youth entrepreneurship.
Wow, that's it. So that was amazing. Thank you very much, Dylan. And that'll conclude our interview for today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you want to find out a bit more about Bloom or Idle, check out the links in the description. Here at Bloom, we provide a co-working space to help young people chase their passions and turn their amazing ideas into fully functioning businesses, which help solve real problems in the real world. So, if you want to see more content like this, follow our page, and we'll see you then.